Hi, and welcome back to the layout. Coal is one of the main commodities on the Asheville district, and today we're going to take a close look at the operations of our working flood loader and how we load live coal loads into our coal trains. So for the next few minutes, enjoy. Let's go ahead and get started. Coal operations are centered around Asheville Yard here on the layout. This is where empty coal trains are staged until the mine can take them, and loaded coal trains are held until road power and helpers are added to get them east up the hill out of Asheville. Today, the power is already added and the crew's ready to depart Asheville. With a red over yellow or diverging approach signal, the dispatcher is given train 745 a signal out of the yard to head towards the coal mine. Also sitting in Asheville Yard today is a second empty coal train. This is waiting for a crew and for its turn at the mine. Here, our empty coal train has arrived at the mine. The engineer is going to bring the train to a stop, and the conductor will get out to throw the mine lead switch. This is a hand-thrown switch that'll bring the train into the coal mine. Leading today's train is one of the new ScaleTrains.com C40-9 top hats. This is almost a stock locomotive with just some weathering and custom sounds. And it really is an incredible model out of the box. Behind it are two ES44 ACs, and these three locomotives are common six-axle power that you'd find on coal trains throughout the Norfolk Southern system and even across the country. As we saw at the west end of the mine, there was a hand-thrown switch. Here at the east end is a dispatcher-controlled signal and switch, so all trains must receive permission from the dispatcher before loading and heading eastbound through the flood loader. The type of coal loader that we've modeled here is known as a flood loader. This differs from the old mines, which I'll touch on in just a moment, but in these modern flood loaders that were introduced in the 80s and 90s, a train can run continuously underneath it at a slow speed and load the entire thing in one pass. This differs from the old style mines that had individual spur tracks and each car had to individually be positioned underneath the chute to load the coal. And an interesting thing about this scene is we've actually left the old style mine in place and just repositioned one of the spur tracks and changed it into a run-through track underneath the flood loader. Loading coal is a manual process, and in real life there's an operator that sits above it, like the booth pictured here, that controls the height and also the opening and closing of the chute. Once the engine's passed, the operator will lower the chute and begin loading the coal. This is a unit train with all one type of car, so raising and lowering the chute based on each car is necessary. If it were a train with different types of cars, the chute could be raised and lowered to match each individual car height. I'll let you enjoy a few minutes of loading the coal train here, and at the end of this video we'll take a close look at how we scratch built this structure and how an operator on the layout controls all the different functions and loads the car. While the coal train loads and ties up main track number 2, the dispatcher is lined a set of light power by on main track number 1. These are helper locomotives returning to Asheville. This is some new power to the layout that I picked up from my friends over at Lombard Hobbies, my old local hobby shop. I've actually done a how-to video for installing DCC and sound into these locomotives. And a side note about some of the sound you hear in these videos, I do overlay some wheel and rail sounds, but for the most part, the horns and diesel locomotive sounds are actually coming from custom recordings I've done and put into these Lock Sound 5 decoders in the models. Let's take a closer look at the operation of this structure on the layout and how everything works. We have the roof off the flood loader, and off to the left is a tortoise switch machine which controls a lever and opens and closes the chute to control the coal flow. There's also a small hopper which is fed by a much larger hopper underneath the upper level. That's fed by a rotary dumper, so it creates a closed loop system here on the layout. Here's the operator's panel, and we'll look at some of the functions of each of these buttons. The chute itself is raised and lowered mechanically via connection by wire. You can see we've used a variable light switch here connected to piano wire. That runs up to the structure itself and is attached to the chute. You can see the bracket off to the back side of the chute, which is connected to the wire. There's also a small switch which controls a vibrator that's connected to the larger bin underneath the upper level. And what that does is helps the coal flow just a little bit better. Sometimes it can stick together, and so that just loosens it up. We also have a light switch for nighttime operations, which is really helpful. You can see it illuminates the area well, and it's something you'd see in real life. And lastly, the small switch down to the bottom controls the opening and closing of the coal chute. That's wired directly to the tortoise switch machine and allows the operator to start and stop the flow of coal. And one side note, the coal we use here is Woodland Scenic's coarse coal. We tried using some finer coal, which we think would have looked more realistic. However, operationally wise, it clogged up the chute and just didn't work quite as well. So that about wraps up this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below and I'll do my best to get back to you. If not, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.